So we are practicing 7. We just went through 7 good questions, and we need to go back and look at it and look at the concepts like we said. We need to visit the study text, if we need to visit the pocket notes or videos to gain more understanding. So we are looking at November 2023, which is the practice question 4 that was submitted. Okay, so there are 7 questions and broad areas the examiner tested, and we want to speak to them one by one. We want to look at the areas tested and the approach on how we could answer them. So like I was saying initially, always start your question, each question on a fresh page. I'll keep reiterating that so we don't forget. Okay, so question 1 speaks to BP Fashions Limited. Is trading and expanding in the fashion industry over the years. The company has been audited by LMP Professional Services. The company is considering going to the stock market to raise funds through increase in its issue share capital for purpose of expansion into new markets. The summarized 2-year financial statements and the 9 months account of the company are given below. So we have BP Fashion summarized income statements for the years. So we have revenue 2.9, 3.5, 4.1 going up. But 2021 is a 9 months financial statements, not up to 1 year. Cost of sales 1.4, 1.6, and 1.9. Gross profit 1.5, 1.8, 2.1 million. Other income 15 million, 21 million, 25 million. Same with operating expenses. We also have earnings before interest and tax, which is EBITDA. And we have the position statement, including total asset of 1.3, 1.7, 2.1, and equals the same liabilities 1.3, 1.7, 2.1. It has become necessary, and as part of the Nigerian Stock Exchange Limited requirements, to appoint another firm of accountants to review the financial statements for some specified periods. The firm, Stratton Partners, have been approached to carry out the necessary reviews. So we're required to A, highlight the features of professional engagements as stated in International Standards of Review Engagements 2410 and International Standards on Review Engagements and International Standards on Related Services 4410 revised, 8 marks. So EA, in this area now, you can see the examiner even stated the standards. So I understand that your question now, in some areas, it doesn't state the standards, but look at this question, he has stated the standard. Am I right? Hello, Eukaria, is Eukaria on the call? Oh, okay, I think she's off the call, okay. All right, so the B aspect states, detail out the procedures to carry out in the review of interim financial information, IFI. C, in view of the changes in inventory in the financial statement given above, between the last 2 periods, provide the substantive procedures that will be carried out to establish a reliable evidence of the change. And D, prepare the outline of the reporting requirements of a compilation engagement. So let's go back and look at inventory and what happened. Inventories have about 425 million, 525 million, and 655 million. All right. So looking at these 5 questions now, we need to approach it looking at the solution on the board. Generally, the question represents a scenario where this company preparing for a stock market listing requires a review of its financial statements and asks about the features of review and compilation engagements. Also, procedures for reviewing interim financial information, substantial procedures for inventory changes, and the reporting requirements for a compilation engagement was what was tested. So the answer provides, if you look at the answers, you speak to the fact that the International Standards on Review Engagement 2410 and International Standard on Related Services 4410 details review procedures. It outlines substantive inventory procedures and lists the common components of compilation engagements. So like we said, the 30-mark question, don't forget, is 54 minutes you should allocate. So for the 8-mark question, at least spend 14 minutes for the 8-mark question, the A part, and spend 11 minutes for the 6-mark question, and also spend the same 11 minutes for the other 6 marks question. Then for the 10 marks question, you allocated the biggest weight, which is 18 minutes. So 18, 11, 11, 10, 14, you have 54 minutes to answer question 1. So ensure you cover all aspects within the time limit to be able to address the question very, very practically. So in looking at the answer, strategically to earn the mark, we need to, for the features of review and compilation engagement, which is 8 marks, the marking key awards 1 mark for introducing International Standards on Review Engagements 2410, and half mark for each of the maximum of 4 features. So similarly, 1 mark for introducing International Standard on Related Services 4410, and 1 mark for each of any 4 features. So clearly distinguish the features of each standard. Very, very important. So looking at it, you should also distinguish, like I said, clearly the features of each standard. And that's why we need to go back to the standard to understand it very, very practically. I think he tests those standards, ISRE 24. I've seen it in previous questions I've worked on. So please go back, read his answers, and be able to decipher and understand what he wants you to write, and also understand the underlying concepts. So for the B part, the procedures for review of interim financial information is 6 marks. So this part gives 1 mark for each of a maximum of 6 procedures. So provide a concise and comprehensive list of review procedures. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you provide 6, as the examiner has stated, you have your 6 marks. And for the C aspect, substantive procedures for inventory changes, the marking key awards 1 mark for each of the maximum of 6 substantive procedures. So focus on procedures directly addressing the changes in inventory balance. And if you look at what the examiner answered, he spoke to attending inventory counts, recording cutoff, checking inventory valuation. So he gave you about 7, and I think this is easy to come by, in my opinion anyway. But then for the D aspect, outlining reporting requirements of a compilation engagement, this is the highest, 10 marks. The session awards about 1 mark each for a maximum of 10 reporting requirements. So provide a detailed outline of the components of compilation report as per International Standards on Related Services 4410. This is very important. So if you look at the examiner's answers, he started listing title, addressee, almost the same thing with the report. Most of them are replicas of normal audit reports. So this should earn you 10 marks seamlessly. These are the same formats we use for audit reports, forensic reports, whatever reports we are preparing. So up to 10, and you pick your 10 marks very seamlessly. So what was tested? The concepts and principles, so that you can study, go back and study. So the question heavily tests International Standards on Review Engagements 2410, and also review of interim financial information performed by the independent auditor of the entity, and also International Standards on Related Services 4410. So compilation engagement, it also touches upon substantive audit procedures related to inventory. So thoroughly look at the study text, and look at video notes in the chapters we'll be stating subsequently, you'll see that he tested 3 chapters. The question looks at Chapter 8, Audit Evidence, Substantive Procedures for Inventory. Chapter 8, he now tested Chapter 11, Audit-related Services, speaking to compilation. Then he tested Chapter 12, Assurance Services, speaking to review of interim information. So 3 chapters, Chapter 8, Chapter 11, and Chapter 12 were tested in this question 1. So please take note of that so that you can study and go back to the concepts and the principles, align with them, let them resonate with you, and as you keep reiterating, you keep revisiting, you'll be able to attempt whatever way he twists it in another question. This is very, very important. So that's it for question 1. And I'll take questions. Do you have any questions for question 1? It's a bit pepperish in my view, but then with adequate studies, you should be able to navigate it because it's a compulsory question. Any question? Question 1? We are usually quiet too. I hope we are understanding these review sessions. We are really quiet today. It's not like the lectures that was very engaging. We are very, very quiet today.
Well done, sir. You've been on this for like 3 hours now.
Yeah.
For 2 hours. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Do you know, I actually took a short break, and I just realized that we're in another question, right?
Yes.
Is it the fourth? Is it the fourth?
Practice question 4.
Is it the practice question 4? Okay,
yes.
Okay, it's all right. Just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, so
are we giving us the year for this one?
Yeah, so the first year is May 2023, 7 questions, and this one is November 2023, sorry. So we took May 2023 and we are taking November 2023.
Oh, this was November. Okay, great. Yes. Okay. It's okay, sir. It's okay. Right. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you for that feedback. Okay, so we've looked at question 1. Let's go to question 2. The 20-mark question each. Question 2 speaks to ABC Limited, is owned and controlled by Dobbs PLC, which is involved in manufacture of car fittings and accessories. TRC and Co. Chartered Accountants, where you work, has been auditing the DOBS PLC in the last...
Sorry, sir. Can I take you back a bit?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
For question 1.
Okay.
Okay. Highlight the features of professional engagements as contained in ISL 240. Okay. This is okay. It told us what ISRS 4410 is.
Yes, ISRS 411. Yes, it's International Standards on Related Services.
Sorry, do you mind if you can you repeat that?
Okay, so
if you don't mind,
ISRE 2410 speaks to review engagements. Then ISRS, which is International Standards on Related Services, speaks to 4410. So we were saying that the answers, like is on the screen, speaking to those standards directly, and the key points in speaking to them, because he asked us to detail out compilation engagements and review of financial statements. So generally, we are speaking to compilation engagements as regulates the conduct of compilation engagements in audits. So the answers were generally saying that we need to understand the scenario and how to apply the concepts of this ISRE 2410 and ISRS 4410. And that is the revised area of compilation engagements. And the other aspects of the question speaks to... Okay, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I was trying to see which of these questions relate to the statement that was given to us. I could see it's just C. It was just C that only C relates to the statement given to us.
Yeah, so he wants us to, yes, only C relates to the statement, but then A and B speaks to highlight and detail out procedures. So A is generally saying, talk to me about the standards. It's not an application. Just highlight features of professional engagements based on these two standards. And also B speaks to detailing our procedure. Then C is the application in the area of inventory, IS2. Then D speaks to outlining reporting requirements based on that compilation engagement.
It's all right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you go through the answers and also the concepts and principles so you can align properly.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, so question 2. ABC Limited is owned and controlled by Dobbs PLC, which is involved. Oh, okay, Sharifat is trying to say something. Yeah, please go ahead, Sharifat.
Yes, well done, sir.
Thank you.
Number 1. Sorry for taking you back, sir.
No problem, please.
That number 1.
Okay.
I think I used to see questions like that. You showed excuse me. I saw the solution you shared the other time. So I saw something like all these control procedures. So I always have problem in that area, analyzing all those scenarios where they will say we should state the key control procedures and so on and so forth. They may give us issue relating to inventories, IS2. At times it might be estimates, things like that. I don't always get that area very well. So please, I want a little explanation. Please, I'm just begging about that area.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much for bringing that to the fore. So when you talk of control or substantive procedures, you first talk of compliance procedures, which are like sampling. You are doing sampling. You are not going into detail. So when you hear control procedures, you want to check, okay, out of a sample of 1,000, you use maybe 100. If the 100 tallies, you don't need to go into detail. But if the hundreds don't tally, they don't follow the principles or the SOPs or the policies, you may need to go into substantive procedures. So substantive is, okay, you've tested a sample and a substantial amount don't tally or they don't marry with what the policies of the organization is saying. So you have to go substantively into detail. Now, substantive procedures, you are trying to get evidence for a larger population of what you are auditing. So for example, inventory, like attending inventory count, if you have an SKU, stock keeping unit of maybe 2,000 SKUs, you may have to count all of them. So if you're doing compliance or sampling, you may just say out of that 2,000, let me test 200. So substantive is more detail, while compliance or checking for control procedures is more sampling and checking a few. So in speaking to this, the examiner is asking you to provide the changes in inventory in the financial statement between the last period and provide substantial procedures that will be carried out. So if you look at the inventory figure or value, it's about 425 million for the first, 525 it increased and moves to 655. The examiner wants you to validate these inventory amounts between these last two periods and provide substantive procedures to have evidence that this inventory are actually recognized and disclosed properly with some level of accuracy. So you need to attend the inventory count, that's part of it. Record cutoff, check inventory valuation for lower of cost and net realizable value based on IAS2. Check also inventory cutoff, provide appropriate analytical procedures. Do they marry? Do they tally? Thank you. I saw the thumbs up. Also confirm the existence of the inventory held outside where you are counting. Are there other stores? And also check the treatment of inventory held on the client's premises that are owned by third parties. So these are how to provide analytical procedures for inventory. There are others for receivables, for payables. So yes, please. Go ahead, you're trying to speak.
Thank you very much. I'm appreciating you. Thank you.
Oh, okay, you're welcome. Thank you for that. So whichever area you are asked to provide substantive procedures or test or compliance procedures, just make sure you know that one is restricted in scope and substantive, you have to go deeper. All right, so it's good. Please feel free to draw me back so that you can catch what is needed. Okay, so question 2, speaking to ABC Limited is owned and controlled by Dobbs PLC, which is involved in the manufacture of car fittings and accessories. TRC and Co. Chartered accountants where you work have been auditing the Dobbs PLC in the last 5 years. ABC Limited is preparing for its first AGM, and its last board of directors meeting, a member proposed appointing another firm different from TRC and Co. as its auditors. The appointment will subsequently be approved at the said AGM. With the directives from Dobbs PLC, the idea was accepted, and Tim Brown and Co. Chartered Accountants was appointed for the year under consideration. There are issues with the marketing of the products of ABC Limited, and there have been criticisms in the public domain in the last 2 quarters. The audits of the 2 companies are going on concurrently by the 2 firms, so required. A. Prepare a list of items to be included in the letter of instruction TRC and Co. should send to Tim Brown and Co. B. For the purpose of ensuring that the financial statements are properly consolidated, prepare a document outlining the audit procedures TRC and Co. needs to adopt. C. Evaluate the nature of the business risk approach to be adopted by TRC and Co. in the review of ABC Limited during the audit. So it's a 20-mark question. You have 6 marks for A, you have 9 marks heavier for B, and you have 5 marks for C. So in looking at the answer, you are specifically instructed to prepare a list. So there's no need to discuss here. A list. So you just need to list out. And generally, if you look at question A, B, and C, it deals with group audit scenario involving a parent company and a subsidiary with different auditors. It talks about the content of a letter of instruction from the group auditor to the component auditor, and also audit procedures for consolidation and an evaluation of business risk approach. So the answer outlines items for letters of instruction, detailed consolidation procedures, and it explains the nature of business risk approach. So you can see the A part speaks to about 8 listed items. So for a 6 marks question, you need to at least, plus the introduction, list 6 instructions or items to communicate to the component auditor. Also, for a 20-mark question, we know is 36 marks allocated. So for A, which is 6 marks, at least 11 minutes, spend 11 minutes writing. For B, 9 minutes. For B, 9 marks, spend 6 minutes writing. 16 minutes, sorry, it's about 9 marks, so 16 minutes should suffice. Then for C, for 5 marks, at least 9 minutes. So in 36 minutes, you should be able to speak to this question if you chose it. And the items in a letter, which is 6 marks, the marking key awards 1 mark for any of the 4 contents. So you need to provide a clear and concise list of essential items for the letter of instruction. This is very important. And also for the audit procedures for consolidation, which is 9 marks. This part gives 1 mark for each of the maximum of 6 points. And also, let me look at it now. B. Okay, so 1 mark for each of the maximum of 6 points and half mark for discussion of each of those 6 points. So focus on providing specific audit procedures categorized by relevant aspects of consolidation. Very, very important. So the C part speaks generally to 1 mark each for a maximum of 5 points. So explain the core principles and characteristics of business approach to earn those marks. So this is key. Now, the principles and concepts tested primarily looks at ISA 600 group audits. So ISA 600 was tested, and that is specific considerations for audit of group financial statements. That was what was tested. Very, very importantly. So we need to align. You can see that in May 2023, he still tested ISA 600 groups. Here again, he's testing it. So concurrently, these are topics we cannot ignore. So special considerations for group audits and the business approach to auditing. So you need to look at chapter 10 of the study text, which is group audits. Whichever works for you, maybe you go back to the video or you go back to the pocket notes, depending on time and what will help you assimilate very fast. We also spoke to the audit approach, chapter 6, and audit planning, chapter 7. So the relevant chapters is tested, chapter 6, audit approach, chapter 7, audit planning, and chapter 10, group audits was tested in this second question. So I'm saying that is a minimum of 3 chapters he tests in each question. So he mixes them. You can see what the examiner does, he mixes them. We have not seen any question where he tested only 1 chapter. He mixes them. So you need to be conversant with the study material, which is very, very important. Okay, so any question on question 2? So that we can run to question 3. Any question?
Sorry, sir, my network has not allowed me to come in. I'm just entering now. Which year is this? Sorry.
Okay, this is November 2023, and we've treated the first 2 questions. So this is November 2023. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, so let's run to question 3, which speaks to Giant Club. Question 3 is Giant Club. Giant Club has been in existence for about 6 years. The club membership comprises of eminent individuals in the society and has a certificate of registration under the relevant laws. It has an appropriate enrollment of 1,000 members. The club's funding is supported by membership fees, parking fees, rental fees, voluntary donations, and income from endowment investments. The club has been named as a beneficiary under the wills of 2 deceased members. Collection on the proceeds of the estate is made subsequent to the balance sheet date. Collections from the will receivable in the amount of 6.2 million has been recorded based on the available information from the estate administrators. During 2020 financial year, the club was committed to giving scholarships to 7 students in various higher institutions. Accordingly, the club has agreed to pay these individuals irregular pocket money in addition to providing medical coverage as the need arises. Since it is a non-for-profit organization, which is an NGO, the club has been conducting an independent statutory audit of financial statements since inception. However, the club has been appointing her officers as at when due every 2 years. The new treasurer, who is a professional accountant, took over the control of the revealed treasury, and his review revealed that there was no periodic review of inventory items and background check on vendors or suppliers. There were calls for vendors stating they haven't been paid when record shows payment have been made. There were cases of cash takings not banked. No control over check lodgements and reconciliation of bank accounts. No background check for those who handled money. The computers in use for transactions do not have protected passwords. No evidence that the organization sent acknowledgements to contributors with record of such acknowledgements kept on file. When new members were admitted and they made yearly subscription, the club did not issue pre-numbered tickets, which could then be compared to funds deposited. When checks were issued, supporting document of expenses and approvals at the time of signing checks were not available, and requests for reimbursements were not checked for arithmetic accuracy and reasonableness before approval. The new management of Giant Club has just appointed your firm as the external auditor, and you've been selected as the senior in charge of the audits. So you are required to, 1, discuss the activities you will carry out when performing the audit of the club, which is 10 marks. 2, evaluate the key audit areas you will focus on to get enough audit evidence on this type of audit. And C, determine other factors that should be of concern in this type of audits. So we have a 20-mark question before us, and we need to speak to it pragmatically. So if you're choosing this question, you know that an NGO is audited, audit evidence is also spoken to, and factors that determines the type of audit is very important. So this question focuses on specific internal control deficiencies highlighted. So it asks about audit activities, key audit areas, and other factors of concern. And also, if you look at the answer points to the fact that the general approach for NGOs identify key audit areas relevant to the scenario, and it lists other pertinent factors based on the answer. And in addressing this question, which is a 20-mark question, approximately 36 marks, just like the other one, is what you should allocate. So for 10 marks, 18 minutes, you should be able to write 10 points that will earn you that 10 marks for A part. And for the B part, 9 minutes. And for the C part also, 9 minutes. So approximately 36 minutes should be practiced under to get these answers. So specifically in guiding you to write based on this marking key, you'll see that question 1 or option A for this solution 3, option A, you should be able to provide maximum 2 points from each of the 5 areas, which is planning, risk, internal control, audit evidence, and reporting. So provide specific audit activities within each of these areas tailored to NGOs, non-for-profit organization context, and the identified control witness. So speak to them practically. The area of audit, planning, risk, and internal control. This is very important. And also audit evidence and reporting to earn the 10 marks. So it's a 10-mark question. You need to speak to it under separate headers. So the activities you should focus on is planning, risk, internal controls, audit evidence, and reporting. Very, very important. So the B aspect is 5 marks. So you will need to, for this part, to earn half mark for each of the maximum 5 key audit areas, and also another half mark for each of the maximum of 5 discussions. So identify specific areas requiring significant audit attention in these NGO audits, and also briefly explain why. So you can see the key audit areas are given about 5 points by the examiner, looking at substantive testing approach, completing the recording transactions, and with about 5 discussions, you should be able to earn your 5 marks. And also for the C aspect, other factors that should be of concern in this type of audit, you should be able to discuss at least for any 1 mark, a maximum of 5 factors should be discussed. So identify other relevant considerations for the auditor in these NGO audits. So generally, this question tests the application of general audit principles to specific context of NGO or not-for-profit organizations, and it emphasizes risk assessment, internal control evaluation, and also substantive procedures. in light of identified weakness. Very important. So the examiner tested chapter 6 again, chapter 7 and chapter 8, and also chapter 9, 4 chapters. Audit approach, chapter 6, audit planning, chapter 7, audit evidence, chapter 8, and evaluation and review, chapter 9. So in considering how these principles apply to unique characteristics of an NGO, for example, volunteer involvement, diverse funding sources, and not-for-profit motive. So he tested 4 chapters. You need to understand the principles and guiding observations of this question, the concepts to be able to glean in case a question in this area is repeated. So 4 chapters were tested, and you need to look at it very, very critically. Okay, so that's for chapter 4. That's for question 3. Any question on that? Do you have any question on question 3? Let's go to question 4. Any questions? Let's look at the last question of these 20 marks. Okay, so question 4, if we don't have any question. Phil PLC has been in business of manufacturing textile materials for about 20 years and has been rendering good returns to shareholders in their investments, rendering good returns to shareholders on their investments until about few years ago, precisely in 2019, the business of the company went down drastically in 2020 due to measures taken to contain the spread of COVID-19 virus, which included travel bans, quarantines, social distancing, and closures of non-essential services. COVID-19 pandemic significantly caused disruptions to businesses worldwide, resulting in economic slowdown. The problem was aggravated with the federal government of Nigeria enforcing restricted movements. All businesses and offices were affected, with the exception of power distribution, oil and gas, and retail companies. COVID-19 pandemic impacted on the economy generally, and the following were the impacts on the company. Increase in cost of raw materials as a result of the devaluation of the currency due to the drop of the price of crude oil. Shortage in supply of key raw materials sourced from other countries, for example, China. Increase in ocean freight costs and inland transportation. The impact of the outbreak of COVID-19 directly caused economic losses through disruptions in supply chain, demand, and financial markets, affecting the business investment, household consumption, and international trade. The crisis led to a decline in revenue. However, despite the challenges, management kept on struggling to ensure maintenance of an impressive performance for the shareholders. A board member believed there is unhealthy relationship between management and the board of directors, as she accused management of lack of transparency with the directors and has threatened to resign as a director of the company. The problem was compounded after a year-end audit when the auditors reported that the company's internal controls were ineffective and accused management in their report of fraudulent financial reporting. The external auditors also threatened to do a restatement on the prior year financial statements, as this was believed that there were misstatements of certain account balances. The managing director and some directors believe that it is their responsibility to prepare financial statements, and the auditors do not have the right to any restatement on the financial statements. The chairman of the audit committee and few directors were in support of the auditors and appealed to the managing director and the supporters to allow auditors perform their duties as it is a regulated profession, or else they will do a report to the Financial Reporting Council on the activities of management. The external auditors were surprised at the actions of management, especially the MD, and have threatened to resign from the assignment. The external auditors during the audit were not comfortable on the following issues. 1. The supporting documents for the financial statements were prepared. 2. Review of opening balances revealed omission of some transactions and significant information in disclosures. And 3. Misapplication of accounting principles regarding amounts, classifications, presentation, and disclosures. Added to the above, the external auditors identified risks which they believed might likely affect asset valuation and other significant accrued liabilities, your firm is envisaging that you'll be invited for a discussion with the audit committee. Your team have been instructed to do a review of certain sections in preparation for the meeting. So we're required to A, evaluate the rights and duties of auditors in a professional engagement, and that is 10 marks. So the rights and duties of the auditors in professional engagement. And B, enumerate what you consider as the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance in Field PLC, 5 marks. And C, discuss the reason why your firm may resign the appointment as auditors of the company, another 5 marks. So a total of 20 marks for this question. So number 1 is a double-barreled, where you see evaluate the and. Just know is a double-barreled question, so you need to speak to 2 things. So generally, question 4 represents a scenario of a company facing financial difficulties. So management issues, disagreements with auditors, including allegations of fraudulent financial reporting and ineffective internal controls. So it talks about the rights and duties of auditors, the responsibilities of management, and those charged with governance, and also reasons for the auditor's resignation. And you'll see that the answer correctly outlines these aspects, referencing CAMA 2020 and ISA 200. Take note of that. So the rights of the auditors, you're supposed to list for a 10-mark question 5. And for the duties, you list another 5. Very importantly. So in picking 10 marks, you can't just write shabbily. Don't mix the rights and the duties together, differentiate them. And for the timing, don't forget, it's a 20-mark question. 36 minutes should be practiced as you're practicing. Allocate time to each part. So for the 10 marks, at least 18 minutes. For the 5 marks, 9 minutes, and you have 36 minutes. So the right and duties of an auditor or of auditors, the marking key is 1 mark for a maximum of 3 rights and 1 mark for a maximum of 7 duties. But if you make them 50-50, it's fine. So ensure you clearly distinguish between the rights and duties and provide a comprehensive list for the duties of the auditor. And also reference relevant legal frameworks like CAMA. Very, very importantly. Even though in the question you didn't state you should reference CAMA, but to buttress your point, you can reference CAMA to add value to what you are answering. So this is very, very good. So to end those 10 marks, make sure you bullet your points and number them appropriately. Don't forget, always start each question on a fresh page. Don't forget that. So for the B aspect, he said, we should enumerate what we consider as the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance. So for this B aspect, this part gives 1 mark for each of the maximum of 5 responsibilities. So focus on management's roles in financial reporting and the audit process. Very, very important. So the roles of management, focus on that in your discussion. So you can see their role: prevention of and detection of fraud, preparation of financial statements, and others. So this is their role. So focus on that and speak to it. And the C aspect, which is another 5 marks, discuss the reason why your firm may resign the appointment as the auditors of the company. So the reasons are clear. 1 mark for each of the maximum of 5 reasons. So provide specific and justifiable reasons for auditor resignation based on the scenario and also based on relevant standards, which is ISA 200. So ISA 200 provides a guide, and I think this question is easy, in my opinion, depending on your choice. So you will need to go back and comprehensively look at the concepts and principles of the rights and duties of auditors. We have in the regulatory framework chapter 2, that videos are covered there in the pocket notes. If you need to go back to the study text, please do that. Also the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance. You need to go back to those concepts and principles and understand them very practically. So he tested chapter 2, which is the regulatory environment for legal aspects like CAMA. And he tested chapter 3, the rules of professional conduct, looking at independence and integrity. And he tested chapter 4, professional responsibility and liability, and relevant sections within chapter 6, the audit approach, and also chapter 7, audit planning, regarding engagement, acceptance, and continuation. So chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4 were tested. Chapter 2, 3, 4, and 6, and 7 also. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. 5 chapters. You need to understand the concepts and principles in this area. So that is for question 4. And it's good to go back and align properly with this question. So do you have any questions? You have to run. Yeah, thank you. I can see you. Thank you for that. Thank you. I appreciate the engagement. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's look at question 5. Hillary Professional Services is a medium-sized firm on a retreat having successfully combined business operations to take advantage of mandatory audit rotation guidelines. At the retreat, it was agreed that a robust software to reduce paperwork was inevitable. All along, one of the combined firms has an IT unit, which has been strengthened with the state-of-the-art equipment. All auditors are now encouraged to show more interest in IT, most especially those that relate to data analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Undoubtedly, understanding the business information system used by management is necessary as they affect risk assessment involved in the financial reporting process. It was also concluded that obtaining an understanding of the field of information technology is a standard audit procedure to be followed. Otherwise, it will be difficult to evaluate the adequacy of the expert work as recommended by international standards on auditing. So the purpose of the merger will be defeated if the firm will not be able to win jobs and perform well in a highly competitive market. The after effect of COVID-19 pandemic has also revealed that one could work with flexibility anywhere if there is a robust audit software in place. The IT audit partner made a presentation on COBIT, Control Objectives for Information and Related Technologies, a globally accepted suite of tools that the client might use in order to ensure IT is working effectively. He stated that COBIT is all about doing the right thing the right way in order to deliver benefits to the clients. We are a staff of Hillary Professional Services. Based on the presentation made on COBIT at the retreat, you have been divided into groups, and the groups are to brief the main group after 1 hour. So A, required, state the purposes of COBIT. Just 3 marks. Control objectives for information and related technology. B, identify and explain the specific components of COBIT. 8 marks. And C, explain how COBIT will be applied in the business process. 4 marks. So the weight is on the B part, and it's a 15-mark question. So generally, the question focuses on control objectives for information and related technologies in the context of an audit firm enhancing its IT capabilities. So it asks about the purposes and specific components of COBIT and its application in business processes. So if you look at the answers, the answer provided, this is a 3-mark question. You see that the answer provides a good overview of control objectives for information and related technologies, the components and the applications. So it's a 15-mark question. As the first 15-mark question, don't forget the time allocation in your practice should be 27 minutes. So allocate the time based on the weight. So for the 3 marks, don't spend more than 5 minutes to answer a 3-mark question. And for the 8 marks, give it more time. 14 minutes should be allocated. And for the 4-mark question, 7 minutes should be allocated. This is very important. So in answering such a question, we need to be guided based on the marking key. So the purposes of COBIT, the marking key awards 1 mark for each of the maximum of 3 purposes. So provide clear and distinct purposes of COBIT. Very important. Provide clear and distinct purposes of COBIT. Therefore, the B aspect, this part gives us half mark for each of the maximum of 6 identified components, and another half mark for each of the maximum of 10 explanations for those 6 components. So you need to ensure that you identify the components and provide briefly the relevant explanations for them. So if you look at the answer, the management guidelines briefly, and also summarizing the executive summary, then you have the framework, then you have the control objectives, the audit guidelines, and the implementation tool sets. So you need to be graphic, because a 10-mark question, you cannot write shabbily to earn it. You have to write in detail. It said, identify and also explain the specific components of COBIT. So the components includes management guidelines, the executive summary, the framework, control objectives, and audit guidelines, then implementation tool sets. So in speaking to this, you'll be able to earn 10 marks graphically. So read through this solution and be guided on how to answer such a question. It's an IT question, and the question tests directly the knowledge, the concepts and principles of COBIT, and the framework of IT governance and management. And it focuses on chapter 16, the application of information technology in auditing. So it covers likely the IT governance frameworks around COBIT, very importantly. So this question, you see that he only tested 1 chapter, a full question on 1 chapter. He didn't test any other area than chapter 16. So COBIT is part of the ISRE, the Information Systems and Control Association. They are the ones responsible for CISA certifications, CISM, and some other global certifications. So it's good we are aware of this so that we can attempt questions around this. Okay, so I haven't spoken to that. Any question on this question? So let's go back to chapter 16 because it's really testing IT areas for students. Any question on that? I want us to round up before 10 if possible, so that we can rest. Okay, so no questions for question 5. Let's go to question 6 quickly. Reliable Limited is into wholesale and retail supply and distribution of stationeries to companies and educational institutions. The company maintains business relationship with other enterprises that are owned by close friends and relatives. The books of account of the company are kept manually and in simple Excel. The company had only a staff in the accounts department since it's a small business operation. A review of the company's operations shows that inventory of stationeries purchased was not properly valued due to incomplete records of purchases made. Although bank statements are obtained, the balances on the bank statements are not reconciled with the cash book. Cash from sales made were not banked intact, and expenses related to cash takings from till were not all recorded or properly monitored. Added to this, goods bought from related parties were sometimes overvalued as suppliers were frivolous, or as suppliers made frivolous claims, which could not be disputed due to poor record keeping. The managing director and owner of the company has been sick for some time, and the wife concentrated more on her own business, leaving the operations of the company to a relation who is not well educated. Available evidence revealed that invoices and vouchers of the company were approved without management review, and the procedure for selection of suppliers was not transparent. The company had just won a contract for suppliers of stationery in one of the states in the Federation, and it was found that there was inadequate cash flow to execute the contract. The manager of the company informed the managing director's wife of the development, and it was agreed that a bank loan would be needed. In approaching the bank, an updated financial statements of the company was requested to determine the financial health of the business and an ability to repay the loan when due. Your firm has been appointed as auditors of the company with stipulated deadline to complete the audit so that the company could meet the bank's conditions. The firm has conducted a preliminary review of the operations of the company and some control gaps have been noted. You are required to A, discuss suitable control activities that will be required in the above scenario and how you assess the degree of effectiveness of the internal control system. A 10-mark question, double barrel. So we're to discuss suitable control activities and we're also to assess the degree of its effectiveness. Number 2, we should identify one and explain double barrel, what the external auditors are expected to do during the course of the audit. Very, very key. So in looking at these answers now, we need to address the suitable controls activity and the B aspect. We speak to the degree of its effectiveness. So to earn 10 marks, don't forget, you have to be double-barreled. You can't sporadically speak to one aspect or mix them together. Differentiate them. Make your work very neat. So looking at the general case, we're speaking to a question that presents a scenario of a company with weak internal controls and ask about suitable control activities and the assessment. So the COSO framework, looking at control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring. The COSO framework should guide us in answering this question. So the answer suggests relevant control activities. If you look at the answers on the screen, it suggests relevant activities and also it assesses the effectiveness and outlines the auditor's responsibility regarding the internal controls and also understanding and also testing. So as a 15-mark question, don't forget 27 minutes. So for the A part, that is 10 marks, allocated the highest out of 27 minutes, at least give it 18 minutes. Then for the B part, which is 5 marks, 9 minutes. So please be time conscious so that you don't waste time. So as you are practicing, take note of these time management keys. They are very, very important. So for the suitable control activities and assessment, for the 10-mark question, the marking key awards 2 marks each for a maximum of 5 suitable control activities. So you need to provide specific and relevant control activities for the weaknesses described. So you can see authorization controls, physical controls over asset, and highlight them and discuss them briefly. Very, very important. And also for the assessment, discuss the design and implementation of the control. So for the assessment, so you need to discuss the design and also the implementation. It's very important. And also looking at the second question, in identifying and explaining what the external auditors are expected to do during the course of the above audit. So the second question now speaks to the fact that 1 mark is allocated for each of the maximum 5 points. So outline the auditor's responsibility related to understanding and evaluating internal controls based on ISA 315. So the evaluation of internal controls and the standard that guides that is 315. Not explicitly stated in the question, but then to go back and understand the concept, you need to look at ISA 315 and how it guides us with the issue of internal controls. This is very important. So the concepts and principles it tests was that of internal control system, which includes different types of controls and how auditors should understand and assess controls as part of our audit procedures. So as per ISA 315, like I stated, identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatements through understanding the entity and its environment is very important. So he tested chapter 6 and chapter 7 in this question, which is audit approach and audit planning. So he tested 2 chapters very, very practically. So go back to those 2 chapters and glean the concepts, and also don't forget ISA 315 on internal controls to be able to grasp the concept very practically. And in answering this question, you provide that you should be able to glean the marks very, very significantly. Okay, so that's for question 6. We are in the last question. Do we have any question for question 6? that we can round up very quickly before 10. All right, there's no question. So finally, let's look at question 7. The overseas technical partner of Orlando Professional Services came for a review of operations and system of internal control of the firm. A number of audit engagement files regarding financial statements on which the firm has expressed audit opinion were selected for review. It was believed that the strategic review will be necessary to determine the appropriate audit approach for a detailed audit plan in the firm to bring efficiency and enhance good client service delivery. The review exercise was also 1, a firm's basis of risk assessment on audit and assurance engagement. 2, determination of staff recruitment, training, reward, and evaluation. 3, previous audit opinions on financial statements and progress on ongoing jobs. 4, system of archival and retrieval of documents. 5, major risks and other factors such as industry issues. 6, procedures for engaging and monitoring experts, both internal and external. And 7, reports from regulators. The team interviewed partners, staff, and directors of major clients of the firm. It was believed that the outcome of the review exercise will help to reposition the firm and upscale strategies to get a fair share of the market in the upcoming mandatory rotation of auditors. At the end of the exercise, it was reported that the audit strategy of the firm was not robust enough, too generic, and lacked focus to meet firm's need in the next decade. The team recommended that proactive steps should be taken to evolve a good strategy that would stand the test of time in the light of increasing competition in the audit and assurance marketplace. As a staff of the firm, you have been selected as a member of the committee to develop the new audit strategies for submission in the next 2 weeks for the consideration and approval of Executive Council for Orlando Professional Services. So we are required A, to outline the approaches to the main audit strategies your firm is expected to adopt, and a 9-mark question. B, explain the factors that will be considered in the selection of the audit strategies. That's 4-mark question. And C, explain the difference between audit strategy and audit plan, just 2 marks. So we have a 15-mark question, and in looking at it, the A states we outline the approaches to the main audit strategies your firm is expected to adopt. We have the highest, which is 9-mark question. So for this chapter, if you look at the question, it focuses on development of audit strategies within an audit firm. So it asks about approaches to audit strategies, the factors for their selection, and the difference between audit strategy and audit plan. So the A, B, and C. If you look at the answers now, the answer speaks to the fact that we need to differentiate between audit strategy and plan, the approaches and also factors influencing their selection, and clearly differentiate between strategy and plan. And these 15-mark questions, like we said in our time management, we should be able to understand now that the 15-mark question should not go above 27 minutes. So even if you're answering it first or last, time yourself appropriately. So for the 9-mark question, give it the biggest weight, at least 16 minutes. And for the 4-mark question, 7 minutes. And for the C 2-mark question, 4 minutes. So allocate those marks based on the weight as you are practicing. So for the A aspect, the marking key awards, about half mark for each of the 4 audit approaches and 1 mark for the maximum of 7 points. So not exceeding 2 points for one strategy when you are writing. So just take note of that. So for the main strategy, we have statement of financial approach, substantive testing, system-based approach, risk-based approach, and business approach. So for those 4, you should be able to earn your 7 points, and it's a 9-mark question. Very, very importantly. Then for the B aspect, it's just a 4-mark question. So for the B aspect, when you provide the marking key that speaks to 2 differences, you clearly and concisely explain the key distinctions between audit strategy and audit plan, you're able to earn that mark. And also for the selection of audit strategies for the 4 marks, You should be able to speak to the selection of strategy depending on the number of factors, the size, the control procedures, the control environment, the audit methods, the nature of the client's business. So that should be able to earn you 1 mark for a maximum of 4 factors in the identification and brief explanation of the key factors that influences the choice of your audit strategy. And finally, the marking key for 1 mark, looking at 2 differences. Clearly and concisely state the key difference between audit strategy and audit plan, which speaks to strategy, speaks to scope, timing, direction, while plan is more detailed. And if you do a table for both of them, it makes a lot of sense. That is good. So you will see that the general concepts and principles he tested in going back to study is ISA 300. Audit strategy and audit planning as outlined in ISA 300, and planning and audit of financial statements is specifically what he tested. So you need to study chapter 7, which is audit planning, and this is very, very important. So chapter 7 was the only chapter that was tested here. There were no accompanying chapters added to this, but the guide was ISA 300, and that will help us focus on how to glean the concepts and also help us understand the principles in case these questions are tested in another way. Okay, so that's it. We're able to run through the 7 questions in November 2023, and we're able to look at it. So please go back, pick the questions, pick the answers, and also go back to your notes. If needs be, go back to the videos, but please understand the concepts and the principles and don't cram. Don't cram. And also to help you harness what you have been listening to, because no matter how you listen to a tutor or no matter how you read, if you don't practice, you are going to be like a footballer that is being trained, listening to the coach. Okay, you play like this, and he doesn't play the match. The footballer can never be a star footballer. So if you don't practice with the mock, it will be hard, it will be challenging during the exams. So we have 2 mock exams, and we'll still come back and look at them like this. Mock exam 2 and 3. Today was supposed to be the deadline, but I don't know. Let me put it